Today we're diving into an absolute masterpiece, Magnus Carlsen versus Hikaru Nakamura. This happened in the 2019 World Blitz Championship Playoff Round 2. In this video, you will see how one player sets a positional trap right from the opening. Then, you'll watch a crucial mistake that changes everything. After that, we'll break down one brilliant tactical sequence. And finally, you'll see one of the most clinical endgames one player has ever played in Blitz. So let's get started. Magnus opens with pawn to d4. Hikaru responds with knight to f6, knight to f3, pawn to d5, keeping things normal. But here's where it gets interesting. When Magnus plays bishop to f4, entering the London system, you can see he's prioritizing quick development over theoretical battles. Smart choice in Blitz, right? However, Hikaru isn't having any of this quiet play. He immediately strikes back with pawn to c5, essentially saying, "If you want to fight, Magnus, let's have one. And trust me, he's about to get more than he bargained for." So far, both players are developing smoothly. Pawn to e3, pawn to e6, knight to d2. Everything looks equal on the surface. But then instead of the more common knight to c6, Hikaru plays bishop to d6, and this is where you need to pay attention. It's not necessarily bad, but watch what happens next. Magnus immediately trades bishops with bishop takes d6, and suddenly, the position is starting to open up, and Hikaru takes the bishop with the queen. Now we reach the critical moment. After pawn takes c5 and queen takes c5, Magnus plays the thematic pawn to c4. And you know what? Magnus Carlsen, he's transforming the position into something where his positional understanding shines. But here's where things get spicy. When Hikaru takes with pawn takes c4, Magnus recaptures with bishop takes c4, and suddenly his pieces are springing to life. You can almost feel the momentum shifting, can't you? Black castles, and white moves his rook to c1. Naka retreats his queen to e7, and Magnus castles. Black moves pawn to b6, and white queen to e2. And then Hikaru plays bishop to b7, eyeing the white diagonal. And Magnus brings his rook to the middle. Naka plays knight to d7. And then it happens. The move that changes everything. After Magnus plays bishop to a6, putting pressure on the queen side, Hikaru responds with knight to c5. Now, on the surface, this looks active, but you're about to see why this is exactly what Magnus was hoping for. Watch this sequence carefully. Magnus takes the bishop on b7 with his bishop, then queen takes b7. Then comes the killer move, knight to e5. Suddenly that knight is dominating the center, and Hikaru's pieces are starting to look awkward. Hikaru plays knight to d7, offering knight trades. But Magnus doesn't want to trade. Instead, he brings his queen to f3. Hikaru plays queen to a6, and according to the engine, this is not a good move. Here's where Magnus shows knight to c6, diving deep into enemy territory. It's bold, it's brilliant, and it's putting maximum pressure on Hikaru's position. Hikaru tries to stay calm with king to h8, probably thinking to avoid the knight check on e7. Then comes the psychological blow, knight to c4, and Hikaru takes sao. The bait with queen takes a2. He's grabbing material, but you can see this is exactly what Magnus wanted. Sometimes in chess, the most poisonous gifts are the ones your opponent offers freely. And now Magnus goes for the throat. Pawn to g4. Aggressive, powerful, and aimed straight at Hikaru's king. Black plays knight to c5. What happens next is pure Magnus magic. Knight to d6, and when Hikaru plays the unfortunate knight to b3, Magnus lifts his rook with rook to c2. Queen to a4. You can see Hikaru's queen is getting trapped, and his pieces are completely uncoordinated. But Magnus isn't done. Rook to c4, doubling down on the pressure. Queen to a6, then pawn to g5, and Hikaru's kingside is crumbling. Here comes the tactical fireworks you've been waiting for. After knight d7, Magnus swings his rook to h4, and you know something devastating is coming. Hikaru tries knight to c5, but it's way too late. Then Magnus delivers the knockout punch. Knight takes f7 check. The king has nowhere to run if king. To g8, then knight to e7 checkmate. So rook takes knight on f7, then queen takes the room. The position is completely winning. Even Hikaru's desperate attempt with queen to e2 can't save him. Magnus calmly plays rook takes d7, knight takes, then queen takes knight, rook to f8, and finally rook to f4. If the rook takes, then queen moves to c8, e8, or e8 check, then checkmate is coming. But Hikaru throws in the towel. It's game over. So, there you have it. A chess masterclass from start to finish. What you just witnessed wasn't just Magnus winning a game. It was a demonstration of how to build pressure, create imbalances, and convert advantages under time pressure.